Well, good day, my fitness friends or my martial arts friends or people who are just listening to podcasts. I've got a special guest for you. I've always got a special guest for you. I've never sat here alone. Maybe I will one day, but right now I have Gavin Van Vlack. And if you know Gavin from fitness, you know that he's been involved with martial arts and he owns Physical Culture Collective in Brooklyn, which is a fitness studio designed by fitness professionals. And it's got Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and yoga and strength training. And it's got tons of really cool toys. And it's in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And some people know Gavin from the music scene. He is the guitarist for Burn, a hardcore group. And New York City hardcore was pretty awesome. It started around 1990, and it appeals to many, many different generations of heavy music listeners all over the world. Gavin's pretty awesome. He's very interesting, and he's going to break down for us some really cool things about playing music and playing in the gym. So ladies and gentlemen, Gavin Van Vlack. They have all these dope shirts for men, and they don't have them for women. And I was really mad. And then they had Tribe Called Quest shit for men, and I was mad. And I was like, excuse me, you don't have any for women? They're like, no. I was like, so that means that women don't like Tribe Called Quest then? They're like, well, you could wear a men's shirt. I was like, and look like a lesbian? Because the cut is not...
Look like a Peanuts character.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, it doesn't...
box cut.
And they were like, geez, because I was overly upset about it.
Here's what I found, because we had the same dilemma with our merch. And it's kind of good because we have a girl who does merch, and she kind of... Her and Red keep an eye on what we do, and like they're like, you need to put them on a fabric that... fits both men and women.
Yes.
Complementary. But what we did get, which I thought was really cool, and especially because I do all the merch fulfillment for the band, is like we'll get women who order the small and they will run out of small. And they'll be, well, I'll take a medium. And they do these tailoring jobs, like these cut and custom jobs, which is really kind of rad.
I'm lazy and I do not have any skill when it comes to sewing shit. Like buttons are pretty much all I can handle.
I hear you.
It's just not my
that would
thing.
be a cottage industry for someone to do T-shirts like that. They'll if they had a tailoring business to
send us your T-shirts and we'll womenify it for you.
Yeah,
or people could just make cool shirts. If anyone out there, we're not recording yet, are we? We are recording.
Good.
If there's anyone out there that can make me a Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow T-shirt in a woman's cut, I would be eternally grateful. I'll pay for it. But I've looked for it. I'm going to have to get it made.
You can also get the graphics and go to Zazzle, and there's companies like that will they'll put it on.
Gavin, how do you know so much T-shirt information?
I deal with, first off with the gym, we deal with a lot of merchandise. We've actually gotten to the point where kids in the hardcore scene have started reaching out because they've seen like Craig Satari from Sick of It All wearing like a PCC shirt, or Chris Enriquez from who's playing with Spotlights, who also plays with Primitive Weapons, wearing a PCC shirt or a Diamond Heart shirt. And I've actually gotten to the point where kids are, I want a T-shirt, which is really cool. But like you said, a lot of the times, and this happens a lot in the fitness industry and in the fight scene, where the T-shirts are dominantly targeted towards men, and it's the men's cuts, and they're very boxy.
It's not fair. I go into Forbidden Planet, and I want a Wolverine shirt, and there's no Wolverine shirt for women. There's a bunch of Harley Quinn shirts, and I'm like, what if I like Wolverine?
Yeah.
Why can't I be a girl outside of the norm and just... Well, it's interesting that we're starting off bitching about T-shirts because...
And cartoon characters. I love too. It's such a psychological show of both of our hands.
I know. Exactly. So you heard us talk about 3-4 things that are very
close to
common to Gavin and myself. We spoke about musical T-shirts from your band.
Yeah, from Burn. But a lot of the thing is too is also like, I know this in the hardcore scene, and it's not just in the hardcore scene. It's overall. There's a not just a demystification of martial arts, but also that women are becoming less and less probably about 5 to 8 years ago, if a woman was to walk into, and you were an exception at that point, was to walk into a martial arts gym, there was a bit of apprehension.
To train us?
Train, well, not just to train women, but for women to walk in because of the concept, first overall, as it's marketed as combat sports.
Right.
Now, the whole idea, yes, it is combat, but the thing that I'd like to get into, and this is bringing in a more of a Frank Ferencic, Jason C. Brown kind of concept, is that martial arts truly are skill-based play. Mm-hmm. And if you get your head around that, it was something also that like I learned from when I was studying jiu-jitsu with Josh Griffiths, is it's the concept of play. And I mean, I wasn't a decent sparring partner until after I'd quit fighting competitively. I've been in so many hard sparring situations. You become like a vet and you're a little bit PTSD'd and you hit really hard and I've been in sparring sessions where you kind of expect someone was going to get knocked out, and that's not healthy. That's not healthy in a general population, and it's especially not healthy in modern day in like high level competitive athletes.
I think that's changing. I think it's shifting and changing because it's not just being tough anymore. It's about also being durable and an athlete.
Yeah,
we're coming to a place where the martial arts, the fighter and the athlete have to be one within themselves, and we're looking at it in a much better way. I'm very happy with the way the world of martial arts and fitness are merging and shifting. And, but it's my favorite thing about what you just said, and you as a trainer, is the exact words, skill-based play. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about my well, it's not my dog, it's my boyfriend's dog, which means he's my dog.
Yeah.
And when we play, it looks like we're fighting each other. Or when dogs play, they're fighting. They're just not biting really hard, but they're grappling and wrestling and tussling and stuff like that. So
Cats the same thing. Horses the same thing. Dolphins the same thing.
Yeah.
Can I throw my pitch here?
Sure.
This is what the facts are. The facts are, honestly, is that exercise is unnatural. Exercise is unnatural. The problem is that we've gotten to a state in humanity right now that we need to use exercise as a prescription because we have forgotten how to move. Mm-hmm. Or worse, we've never truly learned how to move. Let it be, say you are, a high school athlete who ended up at a desk job and your neural patterns have totally rusted over. Yeah. Or worse, you were the kid who was bullied on the playground and you receded from anything athletic because that is what, quote unquote, the jocks did, or that is what the popular kids did. So you took it as anything athletic was dumb.
Yeah.
And it's been proven now in studies, which is great, is that athleticism and intellect walk hand in hand.
Yeah, and exercise also makes you smarter.
Exactly.
Definitely using your right and your left hand
builds neural crossover.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think the thing is owning a martial arts school or dojo or whatever we want to call it. The thing that I try to find, and so far we've had a stellar record with our competitive athletes. Mm-hmm. Our coaching staff is on point. I'm really happy with them. They're constantly looking for new things to bring into the community to make things better. But I'm not so much focused, and especially when people open gyms, they're like, "Oh, I want to have a fight team. I want to have a fight team," and that's a back burner thing for me. My job is that person who walks in the door just by chance, sees it, and walks in, comes in, has never heard of Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu before, and falls in love with it. And not just falls in love with it, but sees a floor full of people that he wants to be involved with because they're having fun.
Right.
My job as an instructor is to make people fall in love with movement, fall in love with martial arts, and find their why. I can't find their why for you. I can just give them a bigger thing to come around, which with us, it's martial arts and physical culture overall. And finding that. It was the same thing with the music scene. Like, you're very good friends with AJ James, who's like, a big influence on both of us. And we grew up in the hardcore scene, which was something that in New York we all came around, and it drew people. AJ's a kid from the West Indies. I'm a kid from a swamp in New Hampshire, and we met up. And we had this thing that we were both around, and it was martial arts and physical culture in itself. and that drew us in, and that was our safe place.
Right.
Which is really kind of cool. And it's weird for me to use that, because safe space has become such a big thing. And
yeah, I understand how you're using the terminology.
Yeah, but I think what we need instead of just safe spaces is good people who are schooled in violence.
Mm-hmm. But it's funny. I mean, even if we just take martial arts or combat sports or sparring or anything out of the equation, the common theme to everything that you just said is physical culture, exercise as play, camaraderie, building a culture around movement, which makes you friends with new people, which creates a place that you go to that it becomes like a safe haven for you.
Yeah.
And then you can add the martial arts on top of it. You can add the physical violence on top of it. But for the most part, exercise as play. If you watch kids, they're doing pull-ups,
monkey bars, crawling, falling,
right?
getting dirty.
This is the stuff now that you're paying your gym membership monthly for, which is just actually part of your natural movement. And you're your kid, and when you're pulling yourself up as a kid, you're not thinking, I really need to work on my lats.
Yeah. I want to get swole.
Yeah, like I've never seen nobody say that.
A 7-year-old kid, I was getting swole.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But but you do it out of the joy of movement.
Yeah, you're trying to do the most, or you're trying to be the fastest, or you're trying to get who could get up the tree quicker.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And that's what I'm getting back to what I was saying. It's like an exercise being unnatural is that, okay, so we take this person who has forgotten how to move and we get them to move hopefully pain-free, fluidly, confidently. Okay, now we got these awesome movements. What do? Let's find some play. Now, it doesn't have to be Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, wrestling. It could be rock climbing. It could be basketball. It could be tennis. Now, the cool thing about these forms of play, most forms of play require a community and require other people, and we don't have enough human interaction these days. We tend to isolate. I'm just as bad as that too. I have to pull myself away from my phone and away from my computer and be like, okay, I'm getting into a black hole. I'm sure it's a very common thing, and we need to watch ourselves on this because I'll be bouncing between email accounts and this, that, and have to check Facebook because I keep all that stuff for work. But I get into this spiral, and you have to pull away from it.
Right.
My workspace, at the gym is obvious. I've got stuff that I can do there. My workspace at home, which anybody who's been to the compound understands. I have a back deck. I've got a pull-up bar. I've got weights. I've got stuff that I can do. I've been known to answer emails and run around the block in between emails.
Yeah.
I need to have that kind of thing because otherwise I'm human. I will spiral into that chasm, so to speak.
Yeah, I will be like, I'm confused on what's going on with Game of Thrones. Let me watch all of season 3 because I don't know who that kid is and blah, blah, blah. Like, I've done that. I can fall into a Netflix hole.
That's the only great thing about getting sick is having a rationalization of being able to binge watch the hell out of something.
What most recently did you binge watch?
I'm trying to think of the last thing I binge watched. Oh, no, what it was? It's because Jess Pimentel is in Orange is the New Black. And she was a very, very focal character in the last season.
What's the name of her character?
Maria Ruiz.
Yes.
And she's a good friend of mine, and I've introduced her to you. She's an amazing woman. Yeah. She comes from the hardcore scene, New York born and bred actress.
You think she would come in? I'd love to have her in.
She would come in. She's and the thing is too is you want to talk about an empowered woman who was raised by an empowered woman. Her mom is just a juggernaut too. And Jessica, it's funny because for the longest we've been friends for so long, and it's just seeing her growth as a musician, as an actress, as an artist, as a person.
And you trained her as well, right?
Yeah, she trained with me for a long time, but I haven't been able to take a lot of clients because I've got, I always joke around.
A new album coming out.
Well, I've got the new record coming out, but I always joke around my life is like a flaming cat ranch on a sheet of slanted ice. It's trying to keep up with everything. So I defer to my coaches. She works right now with Coach Zach Dom at PCC. Zach's
freaking
amazing.
Awesome.
He's so good. I would love to get him on your show because he's got so many great concepts and training.
I would love to. I would love to have him on. He's a hell of a nice guy.
Such a sweetheart of a guy. He's just so slyly funny. He's just so
well. Okay, so for those of us who, and I'm slightly familiar with the New York hardcore scene because of you and AJ.
Yeah.
And I love music. I love everything. I actually just recently saw Incubus a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah, their bass player gives us a lot of props. Like he's an old Jersey hardcore kid, and they're great.
They're so good. So I've learned about it, and I know a little bit about it. But it's such a specialized thing with a really intense and hardcore fan base.
Yeah,
And what I love is that it's my favorite. It was born out of, my favorite 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Right? So, how could I not love that?
Yeah.
But I was wondering, it just seems like for most people, it could be true, could be false, the music industry and the fitness industry seem so very far from each other. Not necessarily nowadays, because nowadays fitness and health is the new fashion. Mm-hmm. You've got like artists and athletes like that you can see them in the gym and them working out. It's like it's a thing now.
Yeah.
But in the 80s and 90s, not really. It
was weird. There was a few people who everybody thought about fitness, and in the entertainment industry, fitness was like, it was almost like Arnold. That was it. It was like Arnold.
It was Arnold, or it was like the complete opposite version of that, which was like leg warmers and G-string bodysuits.
Absolutely. It's funny because I know that within the hardcore scene and even just the music scene, there's a lot. Billy from Biohazard now plays with Powerflow. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Right. I know that the guys in Trivium, they travel in their bus with mats.
And Henry Rollins was always like diesel and really
huge powerlifting fan. Yeah. Maynard from Tool is a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Yeah. There's the kids from Code Orange do Muay Thai. They're supposed to be coming to PCC to train.
How did you get involved with the music industry? And
the music and the music industry are two different things. That's like fitness in the fitness industry,
right?
Because I got involved in the music because I was always kind of a little bit of an outsider. I was always, you've known me for a long time. I'm a different kind of thinker, and that as a young kid can get you in trouble, especially when my mom, who was raised in Brooklyn, Mexican from Brooklyn, and we were raised in New Hampshire, but we were raised like city kids, and we were raised as very free thinkers, which is not a good thing. And I'm not dissing on New Hampshire at all. I learned a lot. I have a lot of life skills and life tools that I still utilize from growing up in a swamp.
Right.
But we were a little bit on the outside, and so for me, it was like a retreat into music. My first musical thing that ever hit me musically was actually a country show. My mom was a heavy drinker, and we were in a bar. I was like probably 8 years old, and Waylon Jennings played.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, Waylon Jennings, wow. It was just a guitar. It was a loud rock sounding guitar. And shortly after that, this thing called Black Sabbath happened to me.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and then from Black Sabbath
I was told that I was conceived to a Black Sabbath song, and I was like, thanks, Dad.
That's not a bad thing. Then from there it was the heavy. It was the aggression.
Yeah.
And then you learn, you start to find more metal stuff. And then after metal, it was like, wow, where does it go from here? All of a sudden, there's like things like Black Flag, the Circle Jerks, the punk rock thing. And this resonated to me. This spoke to me because it was outside like I was.
How old were you?
God, at that point, it was probably about 12, 13.
Okay.
And it's weird because there's a lot of people within, like, I hear things about in the hardcore scene. People talk about the Maxis, Kansas cities, and the things that really shaped, I think, the underground art and music scene, which are really important. But I think you can't look back at that stuff and be like, oh, it was better then. Right now is all that you really fucking have.
Yeah.
And especially right now with the current political climate, I hate to say this, but this is just well-seeded soil for art and music. Right now, what we really need is the art and the music to come out, and we need the solutions in that.
Do you think it will?
I'm hoping it will. I mean, as a musician and an artist, I'm trying to.
Because I'm very disappointed with mainstream hip-hop right now.
Hugely disappointed, but you know what?
Yesterday we were in an Uber, and the song was like, and I was like, huh? Was that words?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you say anything?
But the thing is, too, is you said mainstream rock. also
Sucks.
is really not a good thing. But there's stuff that's out there. There's stuff that's coming up now in the underground, and I guarantee you this because boredom is the catalyst of genius. And there are kids in a garage somewhere outside of Norman, Oklahoma, or somewhere outside of Lansing, Michigan, that are doing some shit that is going to turn us on our ear. And
boredom is the catalyst of genius.
Yep.
Well, if you think about it, like think of all the great inventors back in the day. There was no Facebook. They weren't liking any of their ex-girlfriends' photos. They had nothing to do. They had light in the daytime, dark in the night.
Yep.
Plenty of time to think about stuff. No distractions.
Exactly. And we need solutions.
Right.
We need solutions now. And the solutions are, and this is someone who's coming as a 49-year-old athlete musician
who looks like 30 years old. Seriously, I'm not just saying that to you. I just wouldn't say anything.
A lot of it is the continual movement. Punk rock for us was very athletic, you know. And guys know that. Like in the pit, the pits are tumultuous to say the least.
I don't even understand. Honestly, can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
I'm not a fearful person. You know this about me. I'll jump out of planes and I'll do stunts and I'll whatever.
Yeah.
The one thing I will not fucking do is go into a mosh pit. I won't do that shit. I won't even go near one.
There's so many variables in a mosh pit.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's terrifying to me.
It's and for us, but the thing is,
why would you do it? And like what? How do you even do it? Like, what is it? Do you just push them and then push into the other person?
Can I pull out my books on Jungian psychology? I think as a young man, being in my teens, it was a rite of passage thing. In America
to get elbowed in the face accidentally, but
partially. I mean, that's the thing about it. If you think about when you first experienced the pit, and I know this as being like 13, 14 years old and seeing it and being like, oh my God, that's scary. It was some whitewater rapid shit.
Yes, with your body.
Yeah, and you're watching it, and then
I'm 5'2". I'm not doing that.
But the thing about that is, after a while, and I'll tell you what, there was women out there like Alexa Poli who used to dominate the pits back in 86, 87.
How? Yeah. What are you doing, judo? Like what? What do you do? What is it? What are you doing in there?
I mean, There is methodology to it. There is
I'd
rhythm
love to know.
to it.
I want to know.
There are specific dance moves. If any of you want to look up, like, it's funny because there's
wait.
like sick of it all. Sick of it all put out a video with different styles of moshing, and it's friggin' hilarious. But yeah, there's choreography to it that is actually. I mean, there are some people that just literally will throw themselves side to side, and it's bizarre. But there is choreography to that, and there is technique. All athletics are based off optimal human. I don't care what it is. Dancing, running, martial arts, optimal human movement patterns. It's third-class lever systems. We only move in certain patterns.
Okay.
And we move best when in a spiral. And I'll tell you what, the best dancers always worked within that spiral that we work well in, that we can perform in, that we can generate.
So explain the spiral and
well, let's think about it. The concept of two arts that we hold dear: jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai.
Yes.
Punching at the end range of a punch where you turn that thumb down. Daria Albers would explain this beautifully. And this is finding your range. That's where that snap is. So if I'm punching here and I'm not getting
full extension,
that pronation of the hand.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not getting that full extension. Now pulling here. You see where the elbow goes?
Right.
Pulling here. Okay. We're not excited. Pulling here. You're recruiting fully.
Right.
Okay. Now, think about how you punch through the human kinetic system. All your energy comes from the floor. Mm-hmm. Okay, rotation of the heels through the knees, which the knees stay stable, but then to the hips. Okay, the pelvic girdle is connected through the core to the shoulder girdle. That all works within a spiral.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's where you generate the most power.
Exactly. Now, human gait patterns aren't any different than throwing a punch or throwing a kick.
Right.
Okay? And it's the exact same modality that we would move in the pit. If you look at any of AJ James, who was probably, and it's funny because he was one of the most brutal dancers who very few people knew that he actually ended up dancing for Eric B. and Rakim.
Yes, he told me this.
At a very early age.
Yeah.
Because he was so... the term I like to put is neurologically savvy, is that his body can adapt to movement, and he has this neuroplasticity. Mm-hmm. There's your word to Google, kids. This neuroplasticity that he picks up both languages and physicality like a vacuum.
Yeah. Well, we should also note that to anybody listening that AJ is also a Navy SEAL.
Yeah. He was the oldest person to ever test and pass for the SEALs. Mm-hmm. You know, he's an astounding. He's one of my favorite people on the planet, as he is yours. And it's, you know, he's like, he's one of those, what I would consider both a martial arts legend and also a legend in hardcore. Which I don't like to use the term legend because legend always infers, we get that a lot with the band. Like legend infers that you've already done your best stuff.
Yeah.
AJ James is still a lifelong athlete. You know, he's an avid surfer, you know, longboard paddleboarder. Like, it's like he hasn't, I mean, there's so many things that I think that he's still yet to do.
Well, we're talking about you right now.
I know, but I mean, here's the thing. I don't consider
I've got to tell him that
I don't consider myself to be all that cool. I consider that the people that I've been around and the situations that I've been in are much cooler than what I am.
But Gavin, let me tell you something. I said that once to my baby brother. Okay. I was like, oh yeah, but my friends are this and my friends are that. And he was like, yeah, but cool people only hang around with other cool people. So you must be one of them. You know, you associate with the coolest. So then you're one of the cool kids. You know what I mean? You feel like you're an oddball, but
I do. I totally feel like I'm an oddball. And I think one of the reasons that I hold that is because of PCC, because we're an oddball gym. We have a very, very odd, like, amalgamation of people there that I don't think would walk into another gym and do well.
Well, because everybody at your gym's kind of all tatted up and they look like
a lot of them, except oddly enough, my coaches who don't come from the hardcore scene. No, and they're totally amazed. Like, kids will come in to have me sign records, or we get touring bands coming through that I have a deal for touring bands. Like, you can come in and your day fee is like X amount, and it's funny because they're like, wow, this hardcore scene thing is really, you know, and Zach and Rabbit, who are both. They're homegrown New Yorkers, right. You know, one from the Bronx and one from Inwood, you know, and they're just, you know, it's an odd thing because, you know, the hardcore scene has always been a very important thing to me.
Well, so we'll go back to that first moment around 12 years old where you heard that heavy guitar.
Oh yeah, and
then you just said, I'm picking one up, I'm buying one, I'm learning. What was kind of the evolution of you?
I wanted to learn guitar instantly, and the first thing I learned was like an old beaten up nylon string, like junky classical, just trying to play like Black Sabbath songs and, you know, rock and, you know, anything that had a distorted guitar, I was just drawn to it.
Right.
Because that's the one thing too, is that like I'm a hardcore kid, but I'm a musician first.
That's good.
You know, and I love so much music, and it's amazing.
I know we've gotten into
the people that I admire. Like, this is one of the things I went to go see Converge and Neurosis at Warsaw last week, and a friend of mine who's my band's lawyer, who's the singer for Indecision, Tom Sheehan, is standing next to Dre 3000, and Dre is going off. And people were like, I don't believe he was here. But Dre is a music listener.
Yeah.
He is a fan. That's like my lead singer, Chaka. He's a music listener. He will get into something and he'll bury himself in it, just experiment and explore. And that's the beautiful thing about movement in music, is that's what you can do with it.
Right.
You know, there's so much of it out there.
Yeah, and it's in your bones, blood, heart, you still connect to it, you know, or you listen to something, the hair stand up on the back of your neck.
I love that feeling.
Or it gives you a memory or takes you to a place.
Yeah.
And like I always use this, people have heard me say this on the show a million times. I could be exhausted, physically exhausted. I don't want to do another thing. You put on Sabotage by the Beastie Boys and I'm getting out at least 4 sprints. It's unbelievable, and it just never fails. And I don't know what it is about the Beastie Boys. Like, it just,
because music heals.
All right,
music heals.
We did an episode of the show. If you guys didn't listen to it, you should check it out with Dante Ross.
I have known Dante since we were kids. Yeah.
So we did an episode with him, and he would talk about that. Like, his memory is so sharp, and I believe it's because he constantly works with music, and the area of the brain that understands music is right next to the area of the brain that is attached to your memory.
Right. Yep.
So even in your brain, it's like connected to each other. So you pick up a guitar and you learn and you become an actual musician. You get good with the guitar.
Well, it was weird because I didn't really become an actual musician because I was like, you have to. Well, I guess I was, but I wasn't playing bands till I was like later. You have to find other musicians, which is a tough one. I mean, back then you did. Now you can just write a whole album on a MacBook with yourself, but back then it was all analog, and you needed to have other players to really do it. And so it was me in my bedroom playing with my record. My record player. That was it, and that was, I would do that, and I would go, I lived, like I said, I lived in a swamp, and I would go out in the woods and adventure. My life was pretty much an adventure, it's like,
but you don't really associate like the New York hardcore scene with fitness.
It's weird because there like I said, there was always this physicality to it.
Physicality to playing guitar. I mean,
the physicality to also, like, it's not just about the music, but it's the whole room is involved. When that room pops and the pit goes off and everybody in the room is engaged, there is an energy there that is palpable. There is an energy there that is like, and being, like I said, a huge fan of drugs and alcohol who no longer uses, I like to call it. That is the closest I get to being that high. Anymore. When there is that related kind of energy.
So did you get into drugs once you had the band, or
I was into drugs at a really early age. My mom had cancer. So there was constantly morphine sulfate and Percocet around the house. So I was like a pill popping little maniac. And this is like at 7, 8, 9 years old.
Wow.
And my mom, like I said, my mom had cancer. So there was, and she was on strict pain management because it was all, she was doing the best she could to hold her shit together.
What kind of cancer?
She started off as breast cancer. She was a single mom. My dad took off when I was like 2. I had 2 sisters, my 2 older sisters, Stephanie and Donna, who both worked their asses off to help support the family. I ran a trap line to help support the family. And this is like 79, this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, this is when, like, I hear about all these glory years of punk rock, which, right then, like at that point, I'm sorry, I couldn't be involved, but I kind of had bigger things going on. And then at that point, we had moved down to the city because my older sister had gotten a job working actually on the stock market, which, I'm not going to go into that. She's done extremely well for herself for a woman in the man's market. And she's done, I'll say this. Okay. We have separate fathers. I've never once called her my half sister, because she has never shown me half love.
Yeah. I have the same thing with my brothers.
Yeah. She has always been there for me. She has always been there for my family, even though I will honestly say that people within the family treated her like crap when we were younger. And then when she became successful, all of a sudden we're like, on her jock, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I understand.
And she's, she was the man of the house.
Right. So you move into the city.
We moved into the city, which is traumatic. We moved, the first place we moved to was into below the village. And
that was a scene for music.
Yeah. Well, not just a scene for music, but I was also like a country kid getting thrown into the ghetto and getting the crap beaten out of me. Yeah. So after about 2 or 3 months of that, my mom decided, because my mom wanted to be close to her family in Brooklyn, but then we realized that wasn't a good thing. So we basically my sister moved us up to Westchester. And I went to school up there, which I didn't fit in much up there either. I had a hard time fitting in for a long time.
And you're doing drugs during this whole...
Yeah, kind of, sort of, because there was other things. All of a sudden, there was other things available. And I gravitated towards anything I could find to stay afloat, which, being a poor kid from the country, you weren't going to get down with the cool kids. So it was kind of like I hung out with the poor kids, and the poor kids knew where all the good drugs were. So I got introduced to cocaine and pot, which I never really liked pot much. Loved cocaine. And alcohol. Alcohol was, always alcohol. And that was, here's the thing about it too, is like, and it sounds detrimental, but those were tools that possibly, I think if it wasn't for alcohol, and that's because I think the second I found that if I spun around in circles and got dizzy, it would get me out of my own head, I started doing it. So I was always kind of that mindset, what I would call a garden variety alcoholic. I don't like to glamorize it or anything. It is what it is, you know. And a lot of the times you'll hear an alcoholic talk about, oh, we're not like normal people because we can't just have a drink. Well, first off, I wasn't born drunk.
Right.
Okay, this is me normal. Now, that motherfucker who can get up and walk away from a half a beer or a glass of wine, or Lord forbid, that person who wakes up with like a half a gram of cocaine in their pocket, that's a special individual. I couldn't do that. There was no leftovers with me.
Right.
Needless to say, you know, I'm talking as a recovering alcoholic. 15 years in the program, which it saved my life.
Right.
You know, but at that time, the drugs and the alcohol were a huge thing. And there were times also where later down the line where I kind of gravitated towards like the whole straight edge ethos, which I thought was really brilliant. But then all of a sudden there was this weird Lord of the Flies thing within that just drove me out of it. I was like, oh, fuck you, I'm going back to doing drugs.
Really?
Yeah. Well, because kids are brutal. And I've never been a huge pack animal, so to speak, in that sense. And I buck up. I'm very iconoclastic, and I buck up against hierarchies, which is a trait that is good for me, but also bad for me. And I would see things within the hardcore scene. I mean, I started getting away from the hardcore scene around like 86, 87 because of that same thing where it became almost like bullying.
Okay.
And it wasn't cool anymore. And it was like there was this violence that was involved in it that I kind of was like, ugh. And I mean, if you look in my backlog, I've had a lot of fights. You know, before I started fighting competitively, I was like a street fighter, and learning to fight competitively curbed that whole thing. Right. You know, when you start getting your ass handed to you by guys who are smaller than you, and you realize your own fragility. Yeah. You know, because I was working with the first person I trained Muay Thai with was Phil Nurse, who is a dynamo. Yeah. You know, the second person after I left training with Phil Nurse was Edge Brown, who was another guy who was 155 at fight weight and could lay it on you so hard. And his nephew, Andrew Brown, just as brutal. And I was in the stable with him, Sean Hines, Stephen Millis, Simon Burgess. These guys are like, you know, the forefathers of all this stuff. Yeah. And these guys were all smaller than me and would lay it on me. Yeah. You know, and that was where I started, you know, for us, like, I think Muay Thai was like the punk rock of martial arts. Yeah. And that's what we got into it, you know.
It is the punk rock of martial arts.
Yeah. And it was really, you know, it was another thing that kind of saved me.
When did you know, so you guys got quite famous. Yeah. But how did that even happen? And then how did you deal with that part? And were you still, inebriated through most of that?
Well, that was the funny thing. We took like a 15-year hiatus. And after that 15 years, that was the first show I'd ever played with Burn sober. And people would come like, I remember this show. And I'm like, I don't, you know, which is sad. And it's interesting because.
So how many years have you been sober now?
15 and a half years. Right. 15 and a half years now. And it was it's interesting because I look at a lot of the people that I look up to in music. Like you think about like John Coltrane, who's a huge influence on mine jazz-wise. And he didn't write Love Supreme. And I said this plenty of times. He didn't write Love Supreme until he got clean. You know, a lot of my favorite artists didn't write some of their best work until after they got sober. Because there's a terminology where it's, you know, with drugs and alcohol, where it's magic, then it's medicine, then it's mayhem. Wow. You know, the drugs and alcohol at the beginning starts to make you feel like you belong.
You're invincible.
Yeah, you're invincible and you're bulletproof.
So intelligent. Exactly. You come up with the best stuff.
Exactly. And then after a while, it just becomes maintenance. You need to take it, and then after a while, everything falls fucking apart, and it's mayhem. And that's what it was. And I think I went into that. It was kind of good because I had that revelation going into writing the Do or Die record, the record we're just releasing now, in which I had been put around a lot of people who work really, really diligently at what they do. And I remember talking with you know, like Tate Fletcher and, talking about like, wow, I've never really worked on this type of stuff sober. And he goes, well, you just got to get in and do it and find out who the fuck you are,
So you think drugs and alcohol basically put a wall around yourself or a distraction as well?
By the time I had hit bottom, and I always talk about bottom. Bottom is when your rate of descent exceeds your ability to lower your standards. And I had really low standards. I couldn't get a gig playing with friends. Friends wouldn't call me up to come in to do
Why?
studios.
Was it your behavior?
My behavior. I was totally irrational, out of my mind, I was unmanageable, unmanageable, and smart people stay away from things that are unmanageable. And I was exactly that.
Were you ever angry or bitter with them for maybe giving up on you, or?
Oh, always. And it was always blaming them, never realizing that I had a big part in my own undoing. I mean, it's like resentments are just, it's an old saying. It's like drinking poison and expecting it to kill your enemies. Or those who you feel have slighted you.
Yeah.
And for everything you're pissed off about, you always have a part in it, And I had a major part in it, but I was just not willing to, own my shit.
Well, what was the sobering moment? Was there a particular moment?
Oh God.
Or
the sobering moment was probably waking up face down in my underwear on my living room floor with nothing left but my dog.
No money.
No money. All relationships had dissolved.
So nobody wanted to deal with you?
Nobody in their right mind, meaning that there's people that would deal with me, but they were just as fucking crazy as I was.
Wow.
So, and I mean, that's one of the things is that I'm very open about it because, I know it's supposed to be Alcoholics Anonymous. But if I don't put it out there, then someone who needs to hear this isn't going to hear it. And I'm not saying that I'm the shining example of anything, but honestly, if I can get sober and kind of make some shit happen.
So what is it? You went to AA?
I had a good friend of mine, basically came over, shoveled me into a bag, carried me to a meeting, basically. Yeah, and that was it. And I went and the message stuck, and it kind of like at that point you're just anything to stop. I knew that I needed to stop, but I just couldn't. And it's that what they call phenomenon of craving. Like the second you have a drink, all of a sudden you're off to the races. Because that was my neurological pattern,
right?
And
people have that with food too.
Yeah. I still find myself getting that way. I get that way with guitars. Like, oh my God, I have way too many guitars. I have two hands. I have so many guitars. Yes. That fitness gear.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll see something. I'm like, ooh, I want that. It's like, it's an obsessive compulsive thing that I really have to train and be like, okay, you know what? I really don't.
So how do you train yourself out of that? One, to beat addiction, two, just to understand that that's a part of your psyche.
I sit and wait for my second thought to show up.
Okay.
And be like, okay, you know what? You really don't need that piece of equipment. You don't need to have that guitar.
Well, that's how I am with shopping because I love clothes.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll look at it and I'll leave the store. And if I'm still thinking about it the next day, then I really actually did want it.
Yeah.
Or I save the receipts and the tags and I'll return something. I mean,
because I think it's something very much lizard brain for us to impulsively monkey want.
Yeah. Yeah. So how hard was it to be involved at the New York hardcore scene and not be on drugs?
For a while, I didn't go to shows. I went to meetings. I went to meetings. I went to the gym, and I went into very much what I would call. I didn't realize what it was. It was reinvention. I had to totally just redo everything that I had developed in my life to make it so that my life was something that worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not at all the same person I was.
So you step away from music and then you got involved with fitness? How?
No, I was involved in the fitness industry before that. I worked for a bunch of companies as a high level trainer. I was really good. When I'm not fucking drunk, I'm like on point. Even as a drunk, I would go into work and I would cover up some of the most amazingly cataclysmic hangovers.
Yeah.
But, you know, after a while, you just can't. You know, there's diminishing returns on that.
Right.
And I was involved in the fitness industry. It was in the industry, not just the community, but within the industry. And you'll never find, you know this as well as I will, you'll never find such a bunch of drug-addled sexual deviants as in the fitness industry. You know, it's like a covert Burning Man in a way. It's really kind of, you know, and but God bless them. You know, I've met some of the greatest people I know through that industry, just like with the music scene and the music industry. And those are things that, you know, I have nothing wrong with the either industry. As far as like, you know, they need to survive in order for these things to propagate. I don't like the lies that are involved in both of them. I don't like the manipulation that are involved in both of them.
What are some of the lies and manipulation that are in the fitness industry, do you think?
Let's say like, you know, you see things like, oh, if you buy this book, you'll be able to fight like Anderson Silva.
Right.
You know, just like, you know, oh, if you buy this book, you'll be, you know, 5'10" and 120 pounds and build like a supermodel. You know, it's just, there's things that like people, both things in both the industries that they prey on people's hopes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the music industry, I think what it is that, you know, there's this hope for, you know, like every musician wants to be heard and every musician wants to be, you know, gratified with that audience. And they have this idea that the industry is based around like, oh, well, if I get signed, then I got it made. No, if you get signed, you have to do a lot of work. That's like taking out a loan from a bank. And you have to understand how to treat it like a business. Because it's a business. And in order for your music to thrive, that business has to work well. That's one of the things that Chaka and I in my band, we do constantly going over like business ideas with like, you know, online sales for t-shirts and, you know, ideas that what we can do to incentivize people to buy stuff so that, you know, we can basically have the money in the account so we can tour and we can do things. Because all of these things, gas costs money. You know, being able to stay in hotels, you know, and not like lavish hotels, like, you know, Motel 6 costs money, let alone people have to eat and you're touring.
Well, you've been around the entire world.
Yeah.
I mean, what are some of the coolest places that you've been to and understanding culture and physical culture and music culture?
I love Berlin. I was actually going to wear I decided to wear my own t-shirt, which I very seldom do, but I was going to wear my Berlin Strength shirt, which is a gym that's set up right next to the venues one of the venues we play there. And our booking agents at the time over there, they're friends of ours from MAD, are tied in with a lot of like the jiu-jitsu and the judo and the Muay Thai community. And there's a lot of really cool music and art in Berlin. Amsterdam's and other places we know, like Holland. You know, you've got Majiro, you've got Johan Voss, you've got Mike's Gym. There's so many great gyms.
So you totally have not touched alcohol and marijuana or nothing in 15 years even?
No.
How tough is it to...
Scientifically proven you can't get drunk without the first drink. You know?
Yeah.
No, it's not because like I wouldn't be in this room right now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done the things that I've done over the past couple of years if I'd been drunk. That's the trade-off. That's the deal.
So in your mind, it's just you look at it and you say to yourself,
life boils down to liabilities and assets, and this is true with things like drugs and alcohol and things with people. People, after a while, they're either a liability or they're an asset. If someone becomes a liability with me, I am more likely to shut them down and like not deal with them.
Right.
You know, disconnect with love, so to speak. you know, and it's you can't, because people, you know, if someone becomes an asset, that starts to vampire on your energy, and you can't have that. You've only got so much energy that you have to be a little bit selfish about.
Right.
You know, you have to be, you know, you have to reserve that for the people that you want to spend that energy on.
Right.
You know, it's
who will
super
eventually
important.
turn out to be an asset in some way. And it's not opportunistic.
Yeah.
It's not opportunistic or selfish or anything like that. I contribute a lot of my success to the fact that my friends were successful. Not that they gave me anything, but just because I was around people who were doers. So the verbiage that we would use would be different. The conversations we would have would not be, oh man, that's so hard. I don't know. Or you shouldn't do that. Be like, that's really difficult.
You can't fall
what
into
are you do?
that victim attitude.
Yeah.
Kills.
Let's find a solution, or this is what I tried. It was all a doer culture, a doer mentality.
Yeah.
Let's work it out. Let's figure it out, or push a little harder, or instead of being envious of my friend's success, it was proof to me that hard work pays off and that it can get done. So I totally know what you mean. And I've let people go in my life, not because I didn't care about them or didn't love them, but because it was that sort of vampire effect, you know, or I was just too busy to deal with the bullshit.
No, absolutely. And a lot of the times too, when you keep people like that on, that are in that state, you're not doing them a service either. I have a good friend of mine who, she's done a lot musically and a lot, like, you know, artistically, and her boyfriend would just very, very envious, very just jealous, and was also a kind of a nasty drunk. I don't know the dynamic of the relationship. And I told her, I said, listen, you might be what he has to lose in order for him to get his shit together.
That's true.
That
is true.
And you carrying him is not doing him any favors.
What about your fans? You know, do they ever say to you things that, oh, well, your music taught me this, I learned this from you? Or I
get a lot of that. I think everybody kind of in the hardcore scene, we get that because it speaks to the audience. And we are on that simpatico with our audience.
How do you describe hardcore music to people who like really don't even know what it is? Or what the music is like, what the culture is like, what everything.
In my opinion, it should be visceral and it should be inclusive. I don't think there's room for an us or them mentality within hardcore. You know, if anybody who knows me knows that my friend base is, you know, is very varied, very wide, and our fan base is exactly the same. We have a running joke. We played recently in Riverside, California, and for some reason, this always happens. We get these white power skinhead kids to show.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what people associate with it. And if I didn't know AJ, I might have too.
Yeah, no. The white power thing is a very much fringe, and I wouldn't say it's even something.
I mean, you're
to do
like
with
half Mexican, so you're like, how can
I'm half Mexican, Chalk is black, and our drummer's Muslim, you know? And I jokingly said to someone, I was like, yeah, well, you know, it wouldn't be a burn show until, you know, if some white power kids shouldn't show up. And apparently a fight broke out. One of these white power kids tried to bully up on the wrong dude.
Yeah.
And got his ass handed to him. And meanwhile, his friends, this white power kid's friends, stood back and watched him get his ass kicked, which I'll tell you what, the ass kicking probably didn't change his mind, but his friends' actions, that really should have.
Yeah.
You know? And like I said, we're in a very, very charged, dynamic environment currently as far as that goes. And what I'm seeing, and this is just my own personal opinion, is that someone is saying, hey, you poor people, those poor people over there are the reason that you're poor.
Wow.
You know? And if you look at the foot soldiers are all kids, you know, all of these, you know, and I'm talking kids like 25 and down, these foot soldiers who are being told that their problems are because of, oh, those poor people over there are taking your jobs, even though those poor people don't have jobs either. You know, or those poor people over there are the problem for crime.
Yeah, we're competing with each other.
Even though
those
poor
divided.
people live in a crime-ridden neighborhood as well.
Yeah, it's a house divided. Yeah. I like to think of it in Game of Thrones, right? So like, do you watch Game of Thrones?
Is very, very much
there is
skimming
a lot
up
of
against what's going on right
undertones. to it. Where yesterday everyone who was
Yeah.
like a villainous to each other or against each other had to fight together.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. It was like a really interesting dynamic. It made me think about the political climate and how we think of each other as enemies.
Yeah.
But we're all fighting some same fight in some ways. But
Exactly. Well, like in the last it was said in the last episode.
Yeah.
We're all on the same side because they're breathing.
Yeah, which is really interesting. But okay, we'll go back to this, which I think is kind of crucial. You play music, but you also use the term play in your exercise. So does that have any symbolic thing to you? Does play?
It's play.
What does the word mean?
Play means to recreate. It means to, enjoy. I mean, that's what I always say is like, if you're not enjoying something, you shouldn't do it.
But you have to exercise. Like there's things that I have to do that I don't necessarily enjoy, but I know it's good for me. And then it makes me enjoy.
Have to move.
Right.
Yeah. You don't have to exercise. I don't have to do lunges, but I need to do something that's going to get me outside and get me moving. And because the brain requires it. The brain's a problem solving mechanism. Okay. And if you don't give the brain some kind of stimulus to, work on, that brain will eventually, start to create its own problems and start to come up with worst case scenarios. Now that brain is also trapped inside your head, so right between your ears, ironically. So you start listening to that brain that has not had stimulus. And that's where you start to get these weird psychoses.
So you think when you're doing something physically active, it's problem solving?
Yeah. It's problem solving, and it also helps you to get out of your own head.
Right. It's funny because we did an episode of the show about comedy.
Yeah.
And the reason why people laugh is because punchlines or jokes are, while you're listening, you're trying to solve the problem. And then the punchline literally hits you. That's what, and it's funny because that's where it comes from. And that's why most jokes are in threes, bum. Right?
Yep.
It's it has a 3-part action to it. And you think about jokes and laughter and joy and play and all those things are interconnected. That's
it's true. And you said it right there, joy. It's like when I remember last week during pad class, it was one of the most it was funny because people were laughing. I mean, it was great. Everybody's having a blast. And that's when you talk about getting people out, as someone used to hang out said, getting away from the sad facers, the people who have that victim attitude.
Yeah.
It's you'd see people who would go into like a CrossFit, and I've seen this before, and look at the board and be like, oh, man, you've already lost. You're done. You're done. You can't come on. Well, if you're going in that way about what you consider something that should be fun, you're beating yourself up. It should be approached with joy.
Yeah,